What if I told you that a single piece of paper printed in the United States has the power to buy oil in the Middle East, smartphones from China, cars from Germany, and even gold from almost anywhere in the world? Sounds strange, right? After all, there are nearly 200 countries in the world. Every country has its own currency. India has the rupee, Japan has the yen, Europe has the euro, and the United Kingdom has the pound. So why does the US dollar seem to be everywhere? Why do countries keep billions of dollars in their reserves? Why is international trade mostly done in US dollars? And how did one country's currency become the world's most powerful money? The answer isn't just about America printing money. It's a fascinating story of wars, trust, global trade, oil, and decisions that changed the world forever. By the end of this video, you'll understand why the US dollar rules the world, how it affects your everyday life even if you don't live in America, and whether another currency like the Chinese yuan or even Bitcoin could one day replace it. So without wasting any time, let's begin. Chapter 1. What gives money its value? Before we understand why the US dollar rules the world, we first need to answer a simple question. What gives money its value? Think about it for a second. A $100 bill is just a piece of paper. It doesn't have any special powers. You can't eat it, wear it, or use it to build a house. Yet almost everyone is willing to exchange real products and services for it. But why? The answer is trust. Money only works because people believe it has value. Imagine tomorrow everyone suddenly decided that a $100 bill was worthless. Would you still accept it as payment? Probably not. That means money isn't valuable because of the paper it's printed on. It's valuable because millions of people trust that someone else will accept it tomorrow. Let's take a simple example. Imagine you're selling your old bicycle for $200. The buyer gives you two $100 bills. You happily accept them because you know you can use those same bills to buy groceries, clothes, or pay for other things. The shopkeeper accepts them because they trust someone else will accept them too. This chain of trust keeps the entire economy running. Long ago, people didn't use paper money. They used barter, exchanging one product for another. For example, if you had wheat and wanted milk, you had to find someone who had milk and also wanted wheat. That wasn't easy. So people started using things like shells, salt, silver, and gold as money because almost everyone accepted them. Eventually, governments introduced paper money that represented value. Today, most currencies, including the US dollar, are called fiat money. Fiat money isn't backed by gold or silver. Its value comes mainly from people's trust in the government, the economy, and the belief that the currency will continue to be accepted in the future. So here's the most important lesson from this chapter. Money is not valuable because it's paper. Money is valuable because people trust it. And once you understand that, you're ready to answer the biggest question of this video. Why does the whole world trust the US dollar more than almost any other currency? Let's find out in the next chapter. Chapter 2. How the US dollar became the world's currency. Now that we know money is built on trust, the next question is, why does the world trust the US dollar more than almost any other currency? To find the answer, we need to go back about 80 years. It was the end of World War II. Many countries, including Germany, Japan, France, and the United Kingdom, had suffered massive destruction. Cities were damaged, factories were destroyed, and their economies were struggling to recover. But one country was in a very different position: the United States. Since most of the fighting had happened outside its mainland, America came out of the war with a strong economy, powerful industries, and one of the largest gold reserves in the world. While other countries were rebuilding, the United States was producing cars, machines, food, and many other products. Because of this, countries around the world wanted to trade with America, but there was a problem. Every country had its own currency, and exchange rates kept changing. This made international trade confusing and risky. The world needed a stable system that everyone could trust. So, in 1944, representatives from 44 countries met in a small town called Bretton Woods in the United States. Their goal was simple: create a financial system that would help the world recover and make international trade easier. After many discussions, they reached an important agreement. They decided that the US dollar would become the main currency for international trade. Even more importantly, the United States promised that $35 could always be exchanged for 1 ounce of gold. This gave people confidence because the dollar was directly linked to gold, which was already trusted around the world. As a result, many countries started keeping US dollars in their reserves instead of gold. The dollar quickly became the currency that governments, banks, and businesses relied on for international trade. This decision changed the global economy forever. But here's where the story becomes even more interesting. Today, the US dollar is no longer backed by gold. So why do countries still trust it? Why didn't the world stop using the dollar after that promise ended? That's exactly what we'll uncover in the next chapter. Chapter 3. Why the world still trusts the dollar even without gold. At this point, everything seemed perfect. The US dollar was backed by gold and countries trusted it. But this system didn't last forever. As the years passed, the United States began spending more money on wars, government programs, and economic growth. More and more dollars were being printed and circulated around the world. Soon, other countries started to wonder, does America really have enough gold to exchange for all these dollars? Many countries began exchanging their dollars for gold. America's gold reserves started shrinking. Then in 1971, US President Richard Nixon made a historic decision. He announced that the United States would no longer exchange dollars for gold. This event became known as the Nixon shock. At first, many people thought this would be the end of the US dollar. After all, if it wasn't backed by gold anymore, why would anyone trust it? But something surprising happened. The dollar didn't collapse. In fact, it remained the world's most important currency. Why? Because trust had grown beyond gold. By then, the United States had one of the world's largest economies. American companies were selling products worldwide. Its financial markets were strong, its banks were trusted, and millions of businesses were already using dollars for international trade. Changing to another currency would have been difficult and expensive. Imagine if everyone in your school suddenly decided to replace all textbooks overnight. Even if the new books were good, switching everything at once would be confusing and costly. The same thing happens with global currencies. Once billions of people, companies, and governments are already using one currency, replacing it becomes extremely difficult. So even without gold, countries continued using the US dollar because it was already trusted, widely accepted, and deeply connected to the global economy. But there was another reason the dollar became even stronger, a reason connected to something every country needs: oil. And that changed the world forever. Let's understand how in the next chapter. Chapter 4: How oil made the US dollar even more powerful. So far we've learned that the US dollar remained strong even after it was no longer backed by gold. But then something happened that made the dollar even more powerful. That something was oil. Oil is one of the most important resources in the world. It powers cars, trucks, airplanes, ships, factories, and even helps produce many everyday products like plastics and chemicals. No matter where a country is located, it needs oil. Now imagine you're a country like Japan, India, or Germany. You need to buy millions of barrels of oil every year. But here's the catch. Most international oil is priced and traded in US dollars. That means if your country wants to buy oil, you first need to get US dollars. This creates a huge demand for the dollar. But why is oil traded in dollars? In the 1970s, after the dollar was no longer backed by gold, the United States made important agreements with major oil-producing countries, especially Saudi Arabia. Under these agreements, oil would be sold mainly in US dollars. In return, the United States provided security and maintained strong economic and political relationships. As more oil producers followed this system, countries around the world had to keep large amounts of US dollars to buy the energy they needed. This system became known as the Petrodollar System. Think of it like this. Imagine your school has only one canteen, and the canteen accepts only blue tokens. Even if every student has different kinds of money, everyone must first exchange their money for blue tokens before buying food. Because everyone needs those tokens, the demand for them always stays high. The US dollar works in a very similar way in global oil trade. Since almost every country needs oil, and much of the oil is bought using dollars, countries continue holding large reserves of US dollars. This constant global demand is one of the biggest reasons the dollar has remained the world's dominant currency for decades. But this also gives the United States something incredibly valuable. Not just economic strength, but global influence. How can one currency give a country so much power? Let's find out in the next chapter. Chapter 5: How the US dollar gives America so much power. By now you know why countries keep US dollars and why so much of the world's trade happens in dollars. But this raises an important question. How does all of this make the United States so powerful? Let's understand with a simple example. Imagine two countries want to trade with each other. One country wants to buy computers, and the other wants to sell them. Instead of paying in their own currencies, they often use US dollars because both sides trust it. Now imagine this happening not once, but millions of times every single day. Every day, trillions of dollars move around the world through international trade, banks, and financial markets. Because of this, governments, companies, and banks keep large amounts of US dollars in reserve. This creates a constant demand for the dollar. But that's not the only advantage. Since so much of the world depends on the US dollar, the United States has significant influence over the global financial system. For example, if the US places financial sanctions on a country, it can become much harder for that country to use the international dollar-based financial system. This can make it more difficult to trade, receive payments, or do business with companies in other countries. Another advantage is that the US government can usually borrow money at lower interest rates than many other countries because investors around the world see US government debt as a relatively safe investment. Think of it like this. Imagine there's one shop in your town that everyone trusts. People always go there because they know they'll get what they need. As more people use that shop, it becomes even bigger, more successful, and more influential. The US dollar works in a similar way. The more people, businesses, and countries use it, the stronger its position becomes. But does this mean the US dollar will rule the world forever?
Not necessarily.
Today, countries are exploring alternatives. Some are trying to trade using their own currencies, and new technologies like digital currencies are also changing the financial world. So could the dollar one day lose its position as the world's #1 currency? Let's explore that in the next chapter. Chapter 6: Can another currency replace the US dollar? Now comes the biggest question. Will the US dollar always be the world's #1 currency? The honest answer is no one knows for sure. But today, several countries are trying to reduce their dependence on the US dollar. For example, China wants more international trade to be done using its own currency, the yuan. Some countries have even started making trade deals where they pay each other in their own currencies instead of using US dollars.
At the same time, new technologies like digital currencies and central bank digital currencies (CBDCs) are being developed in many parts of the world.
Some people also believe that cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin could play a bigger role in the future. But can any of these replace the US dollar today? Not so fast. Replacing the world's main currency is much harder than most people think. Imagine all your friends use one messaging app every day. Now someone launches a new app and says it's faster and has more features. Would everyone switch overnight? Probably not. Why? Because everyone is already using the first app. The same idea applies to the US dollar. Millions of businesses, thousands of banks, and governments around the world already use it every single day. Changing to a different currency would require rebuilding financial systems, changing trade agreements, updating banking networks, and convincing countries that the new currency is just as stable and trustworthy. That could take many years or even decades. So while the US dollar may face more competition in the future, it still has one huge advantage: the trust of the global financial system. As long as that trust remains strong, the dollar is likely to continue playing a major role in international trade. But nothing lasts forever. History has shown that the world's leading currencies have changed before, and one day the same could happen again. So what does all of this mean for us? Let's wrap everything up in the final chapter. Chapter 7: Conclusion: Why the US dollar rules the world. So, let's quickly recap everything we've learned.
The US
Dollar didn't become the world's most powerful currency overnight. It was the result of history, trust trade, and smart economic decisions. First, we learned that money has value because people trust it. Then we saw how after World War II, the United States had the strongest economy in the world. At the Bretton Woods Conference, many countries agreed to use the US dollar as the main international currency. Even after the dollar was no longer backed by gold in 1971, the world continued using it because people trusted the US economy, its financial system, and the stability of the dollar. Later, oil played a huge role. Since much of the world's oil is traded in US dollars, countries around the world continue to keep large amounts of dollars for international trade. This widespread use has also given the United States significant influence in the global financial system. Today, countries like China are promoting their own currencies, and digital currencies are becoming more common. These changes could make the global financial system more diverse in the future. But for now, the US dollar remains the world's most widely used international currency because of one simple reason: trust. As long as governments, businesses, and investors continue to trust the dollar, it is likely to remain at the center of global trade. And that's the real reason why the US dollar rules the world. If you enjoyed this video and learned something new, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. It really helps support the channel and motivates us to create more simple and easy to understand animated videos about money, business, economics, and the world around us. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.